This video explains how to service the gearbox and motor transmission system. Usually, the gearbox requires no servicing and is expected to provide at least 15 years of trouble-free service. Some gearbox may have a cap labeled oil. You do not need to add any grease unless you observe grease leaking onto the frame. If you do need to add grease to a gearbox, use any high-viscosity grade zero lithium grease, such as the one here. The electric motor does not last forever. However, PowerNot has selected quality motors that are expected to provide 5 to 12 years trouble-free service. If the operating temperature and ventilation around the machine is outside of the recommended operating parameters, the life of the motor will be greatly reduced. For details, please reference the user's manual. Here are the steps. If the LFC biodigester is running in manual mode, exit the manual mode by pressing exit. If it is running in auto mode, stop by pressing stop. If you do not exit manual mode and stop the machine, then when you restore the power, the machine may automatically start. This may cause undesirable results and may cause injury or death. Remove the front and right side panels from the LFC biodigester. This may be tight, in which case you may need to lift the panel while you undo the screws. You can do this with a car jack or a J-bar. There are 4 screws, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. If the replacement motor that you have has a cable already fitted to it, open the control box. There is a key mounted on the chassis. To replace the motor on the LFC 100 model and above, you do not need to remove the chain. For LFC 70 model and below, you need to remove the chain to replace the motor. You will find details for how to remove the chain later in this video. Remove 3 of the bolts holding the gearbox in place. Rotate the gearbox so you can remove the motor. For old-type motors, remove the 4-hex socket bolts. All bolts are metric, so you need a metric Allen key. Pull the motor out of the gearbox. Support the motor well and move it directly to the left. The shaft of the motor extends some distance into the gearbox, and you must be careful not to put any strain on the shaft of the motor or the bore of the gearbox. If your replacement motor has a cable attached, remove the old motor and set it aside. If not, remove the wires from the old motor and wire them to the new motor in the same manner. Remove the key from the shaft of the new motor. Check that the motor fits into the gearbox without the key. If there are any burrs on the shaft, or if the shaft is too big, gently rub the shaft with emery cloth. Put the key in the shaft of the motor and verify the motor fits in the bore of the gearbox without any force. Adjust the size of the key only slightly if the motor does not fit. You must ensure there is no dust or dirt on any part of the mated surfaces. Apply an anti-seize compound to the key and fit it into the shaft. Also apply it to the shaft of the motor, the face of the motor, and the input bore of the gearbox. In order to replace the gearbox, you will need to remove the chain. Here are the steps. Remove the right side panel. Operate the LFC in manual mode by pressing Stop, Start, Manual, Forward. Using the manual mode, rotate the chain so that you can easily access the link on the chain to remove it. Ensure that you and all your tools are clear of the chain, motor, and wheel when you turn the motor in manual mode. Otherwise, you may cause great injury to yourself or damage to the LFC biodigester. Exit the manual mode. Disconnect the machine from the AC power. Undo the connecting link of the chain using a pair of pliers. Remove the motor as described earlier in this video. Loosen the 2 set screws on the sprocket or the gearbox and pull the sprocket off the gearbox. Use a sprocket puller if necessary to extract the sprocket. Remove the 4 bolts that hold the gearbox in place. Remove the gearbox. On smaller LFC biodigesters, one person can do this job, but on larger machines like the LFC 300 biodigester and above, you will need 2 people. It may help to have a shop crane or floor crane, otherwise you might seriously injure yourself. You can remove most gearboxes by sliding to the left or moving forward from the chassis. Put the new gearbox in place and loosely fit the 4 bolts that hold it to the chassis. Remove the key from the shaft of the gearbox and ensure the sprocket fits the shaft without force. If necessary, remove any burrs from the shaft of the gearbox with emery cloth. Put the key in the shaft of the gearbox and verify the sprocket fits onto the shaft without any force. Adjust the size of the key slightly if the sprocket does not fit. Remove the sprocket and remove the key from the shaft of the gearbox. Clean the shaft of the gearbox, the bore of the sprocket, and the key scrupulously. You could also use an air gun. Apply anti-seize compound to the key and fit it to the shaft. Apply anti-seize compound to the shaft of the gearbox as described earlier in this video. If you do not apply an anti-seize compound to these surfaces, the shaft may freeze to the bore of the gearbox. This may make it difficult or impossible to remove the motor later, resulting in damage to the motor, gearbox, or both. When you reinstall the chain, the easiest way to get the link into the 2 parts is by putting the chain around the main sprocket. Move the gearbox back by adjusting the 2 tension bolts at the back side of the gearbox. Tighten the bolts holding the gearbox. This may cause the chain to tighten unexpectedly. Once the chain is at the correct tension, tighten the lock nuts on the tensioning bolts. Start the machine by pressing Start, Auto. Reinstall all the panels. If you still have any questions, please contact your authorized distributor or Power Knot.